I think it's pretty safe to say that the Dead by Daylight community is not very happy right now. The devs continue to make changes to the game that most people think are horrible. Sometimes we're lucky enough that they back off, and sometimes not. Even worse though is the sides of the community going against each other. Dead by Daylight has always been a game about 4 survivors going up against 1 killer and trying to survive. But over time, as players become more efficient, the game has started to shift to these handful of killers are really good and powerful, meanwhile the rest of the roster gets bullied into the dirt. Unfortunately, this is something that a lot of the community fails to see. We can't balance the game around killers like Nurse and Blight when killers like Pig and Wraith exist in the same game as well. There's a lot of the time it asks for more anti-slugging features or anti-tunneling features, features that kind of give the survivors a little bit more base protection against some type of less desirable play. But against killers who struggle to make it even to the middle of the pack, this hurts them a lot. And the worse the game gets for weaker killers, the more often we are going to see the stronger killers every day. And this all sums up to the main reason I am making this video. Yeah, we all can agree the devs of Dead by Daylight could do a way better job, unfortunately, but something that could really make the community feel less split would be bringing both sides together. If you guess what I'm talking about, that means no more killer and no more survivor queues. I know this sounds like a crazy decision, but when you played Friday the 13th, you didn't have much of a choice between playing as Jason or a counselor. You would queue up for a match just like everybody else, and the role you got was the role you got. I know people like to say they're either a killer or a survivor main, but the benefits of this outweigh the cons. If you are someone who only plays one role, your greater understanding of the game and balance of the whole is severely lacking compared to someone who plays both. But this change isn't just about players who would consider themselves more competitive. This would also improve the casual experience. A big portion of what people do when they play video games is play with their friends, and Dead by Daylight does have a custom lobby for this that doesn't even reward blood points. There are too many survivors and too many killers in this game that seeing no progression whatsoever just does not feel good at all. I don't know why behavior is so scared of us farming for 20,000 blood points a match, but it's really not that big of a deal, I promise. Now, other options you may have is queuing up for 2v8, or you can play as a group of survivors with your friends. Touching back to Friday the 13th for a second, there is definitely a lot of joy playing a killer against your friends. When I got to play as Jason in that game, it was just laughs, and honestly a lot of fun to do that with them. I know there might be concerns about people griefing in public lobbies, but I really wouldn't see that as an issue if you have a decent reporting system in play. The way the game is now, maybe I am really in the mood to play Springtrap, but I'm in a Discord party with my friends. At this point, I obviously want to play a game with them, but I don't have a lot of options if I want to play Dead by Daylight. We could do 2v8, but the killer options for that are extremely limited, especially if you're trying to play a specific licensed character, so that's pretty much off the table. Other than that, I can play a survivor, which, maybe I want to play killer instead. Being able to queue up with friends, regardless of my desired role, and simply being able to put a preference if I want to play killer or survivor would do this game wonders. It would improve queue times based on whatever the game needs at the time. Even if it's a busy night and a lot of killers are active, you can just queue for more survivors, and the game would be able to fix that automatically. The idea of being able to play against my friends in pubs sounds like a lot of fun to me, whether I'm playing as survivor or as killer. Because if I'm playing killer, or actually if I'm playing survivor, either way, I'm trying to win. Or I'm just trying to mess around and have a good time. Of course, I'm not saying at the expense of others, but if I want to try a wacky build, I can do that, and it'll be funny together. A big reason for this change would definitely be to reduce the toxicity between both sides. The community loves to come up with their own imaginary rulebook for both sides, whether it be you're not allowed to tunnel, you're not allowed to camp, you're not allowed to gen rush, whatever that may be. There are always complaints from both sides, and having a better understanding of your counterpart would reduce these by a lot. If you've played killer before, chances are you've been teabagged at the exit gates. Unless the other side was actually really toxic, I just don't see a reason for this. If I'm playing killer, I feel like I played pretty fair, and to teabag at the exit gates just because 1 out of 4 of you escaped, I don't know, seems a little cringy to me. But if I'm a survivor player and I absolutely hate being slugged, chances are this is going to transfer to the other side when you play killer, and you aren't going to slug people. There are also a lot of survivor players who get a kind of killer anxiety, and I think the only way to really overcome that would be to play the opposite role. When I first started playing Dead by Daylight, I did not like playing killer at all because I felt like I just wasn't any good and was getting stomped on. But then I continued to experiment and I found a killer I liked and found a lot of fun playing. And that just grew my overall joy when playing the game. If everybody was forced to play both roles, the complaining about the survivor or the killer imaginary rulebooks would just go down significantly. And if the game had more killer players, maybe we could see the game grow in a direction where more of the weaker killers kind of got buffed up a little bit to be more threatening like they once were. The way the game sits now, a lot of the time the survivors scare the killers, and not the other way around. And when the community isn't fighting amongst themselves, there's actually a better place to focus your attention. And drumroll please everybody, that would be the dev team. If you as a survivor main are being exposed to playing killer more and or vice versa, you are going to have a better understanding of the game and what it needs. So when patch notes drop and you see that a very survivor-sided map is getting buffs for survivors, you can probably question that and say, hey dev team, this doesn't make sense. Or when Blight was getting his add-ons reworked and for some reason ended up getting some buffs. I don't know how that happened, but it did. Now granted, just because we know what the game may need doesn't mean the dev team will listen. But at the end of the day, having more voices on the same page just makes that page read louder. Now we shouldn't have to go to such extreme lengths to get the dev's attention, but honestly at this point, I'm not really sure what other options we have. When I play Survivor, I like seeing a wide variety of killers. I mean, we have how many of them in the game. But when I play killers, sometimes I like to play killers I like that aren't necessarily the strongest. At the end of the day, I love playing Sonico, but as the game continues to go in the direction it is, it feels more and more like torture every time. The dev team really shouldn't have as hard of a time as they do for balancing this game. The community for the most part knows which killers are good and knows which killers are bad. Why is it that difficult to go through the roster one by one and just see which ones need buffs, which ones need nerfs, and bring them all closer to the middle? Same thing can be said for the maps. A lot of maps are very clearly killer-sided or survivor-sided depending on the amount of pallets, tiles, open spaces available to each side. And of course this all stems from the dev team using data which doesn't fully paint the picture. There's a reason Nurse has been an S-tier killer for so long, Blight has been S-tier for so long, and killers like the Pig and Trapper have been D-tier for so long. And the fact none of them have received significant changes to bring them closer together is actually really sad. I don't think it's that difficult to be able to tell Nurse is a stronger killer than Pig, let's get them closer to the B tier or A tier in the middle. Maybe one day we'll get there, I don't know, I'm not feeling very hopeful. I miss seeing killers like Ghostface more often, or like Demogorgon. There are plenty of killers in the game who are fun to go against but aren't considered A or S tier. In the meantime, while the dev team continues to struggle to balance this game that they've been balancing for almost 10 years now, we might as well make a turn in the more casual direction. And I think making the community play both roles is a great way to do that. This will be an absolutely massive change for the game, and for a lot of people, a very unwelcome one. But for me, I think the long-term good would outweigh the short-term bad. While we would see a drop in some players who just want to play their preferred role, we would also see an increase in players who play competitively or casually against their friends. If this is an idea you're really against, definitely make sure to let me know why. If you're someone watching who only plays Killer or only plays Survivor, I bet you could find at least a little bit of fun playing the other role. But for now everybody, thank you so much for watching. That is everything for me for today, and I hope to see you in the next one.